Autism cases are at an all-time high in the UK, with 1 in every 100 people now thought to be autistic. Yet it is still one of the least understood conditions.
A huge and often conflicting range of signs.
When we get home, it's pretty likely that all 4 of us will have some kind of meltdown.
Skills.
Actually, at this most difficult type of trial, the autistic group was much better.
And sometimes disabilities. I'm Georgia Harper, a trainee human rights lawyer.
And I'm Sam Ahern, an artist. We already know we're autistic.
But are you?
Experts now believe thousands of people may be living with autism but don't know it.
I absolutely believe that there is a diagnosis crisis in this country for autistic people.
These people are part of a lost generation, missed by a system struggling to understand the condition.
But the scientists we've grown up with want to help us improve our understanding of autism.
And are taking their research out of the lab and into the real world to try and help those who may have been missed.
They've been running an experiment that tests the nation to gain an up-to-date picture of autism.
There were 750,000 people who took the test.
It's one of the largest ever surveys of its kind and will uncover how autistic traits are spread across the population.
Have we been overlooking females in the population who might need a diagnosis? Have we been simply missing them?
2 people who think they're part of the lost generation have agreed to meet the scientists and be put to the test.
If I was at home, I probably would have thrown something or screamed.
Inside, I'm boxing, you know, it feels like a 12-round heavyweight fight.
Joining them is Anna Richardson. She's not autistic, but her nephew is, and she wants to find out what it means to be on the spectrum.
Could that not be just part of feeling shy?
Sometimes it can be really awkward to ask an autistic person what it's like.
So, to save you the embarrassment, we've got some autistic people to tell you instead.
You can't suddenly, become autistic on Monday, then on Tuesday you're a little bit dyslexic instead.
Someone did once get confused between being autistic and being a psychopath.
That sounds like a barrel.
Yeah, I think she said, you need to be careful around autistic people because you don't want them to kill you. It was
you might
completely
catch
straight
it.
face, but she genuinely believed this.
Have a check. Sorry about the toothpicks. 82, 82, 82. 82 what? How much is this? Toothpicks.
In 1988, Dustin Hoffman's mind-boggling counting skills in Rain Man was the first time most people saw autism on screen. Back then, it was considered rare, but diagnosis has since exploded, with over 700,000 people now thought to be autistic in the UK. But how much truth is there in Hollywood's take on autism?
Lots of people think that everybody on the spectrum has a superpower that they bring out at parties.
Yeah, and there's still this idea of the spectrum as a straight line, from high-functioning Sheldon Cooper stereotype at one end to low-functioning Rain Man stereotype at the other. But that's totally wrong. Autistic people like us aren't just one single trait. It's nowhere near as simple as that. Our spectrum is a mix of interconnected but very different traits that shape how we perceive the world around us and how we appear to the outside world.
You don't look autistic. I could never guess. It's a bad thing.
Oh,
I'm gonna walk around with a flashing badge that says autism. I do have a flashing badge that says autism. I'm not wearing it today.
I think it'd be very hard for neurotypicals to get their head around the fact that we have autism because we look like them and we sound like them. It's just that we have different needs.
I think at this point we should probably explain what neurotypical means. It's not some special autistic swear word. Neurotypical is a term coined by activists in the 1980s to essentially mean non-autistic. So for the purposes of this show, when we're describing someone as neurotypical, we're basically saying they're not one of us.
And we don't want you guys to feel left out, so we've asked the very lovely but non-autistic Anna Richardson to be your guide.
My family is one of many living with autism. A little while ago, my nephew was diagnosed.
And it sort of made sense to us all because even from when he was very, very little, his behaviour was different, he was different, and his behaviour actually, in truth, was very, very challenging, and that's what made him special. But his parents really were searching for an explanation for why he was not the same as the other children. So when the diagnosis came, it wasn't a surprise for us, but having said that, I've still struggled to understand exactly what autism means, because in your head you're thinking, well, you know, Rain Man, isn't that what it means? That, you know, they're really into sort of data and figures, and that's not necessarily the case. So I'm still trying to work out, when somebody says they are autistic, what does that actually mean?
Professor Liz Pellicano heads up the Centre for Research in Autism and Education at UCL.
So Liz, what on earth is autism? Is it a disorder? Is it an illness? Is it a disability? What is it?
Autism means different things to different people. It's a neurological condition, which essentially means that autistic people's brains are wired differently from people who aren't autistic. But it doesn't mean that autistic people's brains are faulty or damaged or broken in any way.
They're just different?
They're just different.
So it is not an illness?
No.
So you're either autistic or you're not. But what makes somebody autistic then?
I think it's a combination of many traits, and many traits from birth. So it's something that you're born with. Your brain is wired in a different way.
So there seems to be an absolute explosion in the diagnosis of autism at the moment in the UK. What is going on? Are there more autistic people?
There are certainly more autistic people being diagnosed, but that doesn't mean there are more autistic people out there. I think there have been changes in the way that we define autism, and therefore more people are being included in that diagnostic category.
One of the most shocking things that I came across was the fact there's a huge pool of undiagnosed people.
Yeah, I think they're a lost generation.
Experts like Liz think there could even be thousands of adults struggling through life without a diagnosis.
It's a scandal, really, to think that potentially a whole generation of people have been missed. I mean, where are these people? Who are these people?
For someone new to autism, like Anna, the realities can often be shocking. How many of you think getting a diagnosis is easy? You think to yourself one day, I think I might be autistic. You go to the doctor, you get diagnosed, done.
And then we send you a badge and a welcome to the club hamper.
The truth is, getting a diagnosis in the UK is really, really hard. The National Autistic Society estimates it can take an average of 2 years to get diagnosed after people first seek help. And with waiting lists getting even longer, it could mean support for the undiagnosed is slipping further away. So now, in a unique experiment, a group of scientists want to help this lost generation and are adapting their cutting-edge research into real-world settings. To help us understand more about autism, they're breaking it down into 3 main areas of behaviour: social interaction, organisation and senses, and will test the nation in each. You can't be a little bit autistic, so to get a diagnosis, you need to present signs in all the areas.
This online study, which over 750,000 of you took part in, will reveal how autistic traits are spread across the population. And in a more in-depth study, Anna will join 2 people who suspect they are autistic as they are put through a series of tests in the same 3 areas. 38-year-old musician JP.
I've always felt different. I've just never fit in.
And 35-year-old mum of 3, Jo.
Today we're off to a pottery painting class. I'm doing it because I feel like it's kind of expected, you know? It's expected to be social and have friends and meet up and have coffee and that kind of thing. And I feel like I should be doing that. And if I do it, then maybe it won't be so difficult.
Jo avoids most social engagements as she finds the awkwardness of small talk too much of a struggle.
Isn't it lovely it's not raining today? It is. Wasn't it horrible yesterday? Oh, yeah. Makes you a bit fed up when it's raining all the time.
The social kind of chit-chat about weather is not interesting, really. And I understand that in normal society that is the norm and people will talk about that and it's polite, but I'm just feeling a bit like, pointless, it's pointless.
I hope it's going to be nice next weekend because Ollie's going camping with beavers. Although he's quite reluctant to go now,
I think I'm reaching my limit of interacting with people now, and I've finished my pottery and I would quite like to go.
She could have got a weekend to herself.
To be honest though, Jo's not the only one that can't stand talking about the weather. I mean, I hate it when I'm in a social situation. All that small talk makes me really uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean I'm autistic.
Experts reckon there could be a lost generation of thousands of people in the UK who are autistic but don't know it.
Anna Richardson is joining 2 people who suspect they are part of that group and are undergoing testing by some of Britain's leading experts.
People with autism have a lot of difficulty intuitively knowing what other people might be thinking. To make a friendship, to communicate effectively, you have to be modelling what somebody else is thinking.
Professor Frankie Happy has spent decades studying social understanding in autistic people.
Could that not be, to an extent, just part of feeling shy?
Shyness is worrying about how you're perceived by other people, quite often.
So sort of social anxiety?
Exactly.
Okay.
Whereas most people with autism aren't thinking what other people are thinking, and that's the cause of their difficulties. And many people with autism are shy, but many people with autism are very gregarious. They absolutely want to have friends. They absolutely want to be around other people. They're just not quite sure how to do it in the right way.
To investigate how autistic people interpret social situations, Professor Frankie invented the Strange Stories test that is now used all around the world. She's adapted her pioneering work into a live stage setting for JP and Joe.
First of all, I'm going to ask you to watch some little scenarios and just follow what's going on and answer some questions about what the characters say and why they say it and what you might say in the same sort of situation.
Professor Frankie's test involves 2 actors playing out simple, everyday scenarios. In each, an actor will say something they don't actually mean. So tell a white lie or say something ironically. These are things that autistic people can struggle to understand.
Starting with the first scenario now, if you're ready.
Oh, John's just sent me a disgusting photo of his bike accident.
Ugh, I'm squeamish. But let me have a look.
So first question, why did Candice say that? And then question 2, if you were in Donal's situation, what would you say next?
To me, it's clear that Candice's curiosity has simply got the better of her. But how did Joe and JP perceive it?
What did you think Donal might have said to her in response?
No.
Just don't look at it?
Just don't look.
OK.
Yeah, because she just told him that she was squeamish, so for her then to say, oh, I'll have a look, he should just say no.
What did you think if you were in Donal's situation you might say to her?
I would have asked why she changed her opinion of wanting to watch the video.
Yeah.
For me, everything's so black and white. It's certainly this or it's certainly not that. You know, for someone to be on the fence about watching a video, it's weird to me.
OK, I've been working on this for ages, and I think I've finally got it. I think I want the end of my song to sound like this. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Donal told a white lie to save Candice's feelings when it comes to her dreadful singing.
So do you think he actually thought it was good?
Well, possibly not. I didn't think it was good.
But you can't be sure what
No,
he thinks?
no.
OK. And what might she say back?
Oh, thank you.
OK.
If I was in her situation and I had done something that wasn't quite up to the standard, I might want to go off and change things about what I've done to improve it.
Frankie's research suggests many autistic adults have taught themselves skills they'll need to cope in social situations. But how do you teach young children who are minimally verbal or struggle with social interaction? Meet Zeno the robot. He's emotional, loves interacting with those around him, and will even dance if you ask him nicely. Professor Liz Pellicano hopes the robot can help autistic children learn about people's facial expressions.
Yay! That was amazing! The whole premise for kind of using robots with autistic children is that they are more predictable than humans and therefore less threatening. And so the idea is that they'll be more kind of at ease and therefore ready to learn.
This £9,000 super toy is kitted out with a clever combination of facial recognition technologies as well as artificial intelligence.
This is my friend Zeno, Hayden. Would you like to say hello to Zeno? Would you? Zeno, do you want to say hello to Hayden? Hey! He's saying hello to you.
Motors in Zeno's face mean that he can make distinct facial expressions back to the children.
We're going to ask Zeno how he feels today. Zeno, how do you feel today? Oh, how does he feel, Hayden? Which one? Sad. He's doing sad.
Happy.
He's happy. Nice one. Well done.
More than a dozen studies have suggested there are real benefits to using robots in autism therapy, ranging from increased speech and eye contact to improved social behaviour.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Both Joe and JP say they struggle with social interaction. But does that make them autistic? Frankie's previous results from her test showed that autistic people only understood what the actors meant about 2/3 of the time. So how do they compare?
A lot of your answers were straightforward. You weren't doing all that sort of mind reading. That is the kind of response that we quite often see from people who are on the autism spectrum. They don't see the value in sugarcoating things. I think that's an incredible strength of being straightforward and cutting through the rubbish. JP, in the same guitar scenario, you said that Donald was not being honest. So you didn't like the fact that he was saying something that was effectively a lie.
Yeah.
For you, the words weren't honest, and that wasn't acceptable.
Yeah.
And again, I respect and admire that.
Frankie's test alone doesn't diagnose autism, but it can help shed some light on what JP and Joe's behaviour might mean.
I'm particularly interested in Joe because I know that women on the spectrum often don't present in the way that that men do, and the way that the stereotype of what we see in autism, and so they often fly under the radar.
So how is it that, being a woman, that they present differently?
Well, there isn't enough research on women with autism because we believe that there are 4 times as many males as females. Probably there are many more females that we haven't come to diagnosis. We don't know why it is that many females seem to be able to camouflage their autism, whether that's about the motivation to fit in, and not as many men on the spectrum tell us that they do that.
This is a bit of a mind blow because I just thought autism was autism. Had absolutely no idea that there's a difference between men and women when it comes to autism. So what's extraordinary about that is that how many women are part of this lost generation? Where are they?
Historically, autism diagnosis was seen as largely a boys' club. The mostly male experts only allowed just a few of us girls in. For a long time, it was thought there were far more men than women with autism. Not anymore. The reality is that lots of women are autistic.
I don't think I even realised I could be autistic because I'd grown up thinking that only boys could be autistic, and it's not until I met somebody, another girl with autism, that you thought, actually there are people like me.
Sometimes, diagnostic criteria only looks out for stereotypical male behaviour, so misses the women. Often, the experts just don't understand autistic women. There's even one theory that says we have male brains.
We're also very good at hiding our autism. Experts call it social masking, which could be the reason to why so many of us are getting missed. 30-year-old employment consultant Emily wasn't diagnosed until she was 28 and thinks the way she masked her autism to fit in was a big reason why.
Social masking can be incredibly effective, and to show this, I'm going to do an experiment with some of my friends. We've got some guys along, and we're going to speed date them. You're going to be able to see how we use social masking to make them feel comfortable, engage in conversation with them, and present ourselves as non-autistic women. The guys who are involved in this experiment don't know that we have autism, and I think we're all quite strong social maskers, so I think that it's unlikely that they'll pick it up, but of course, you never know. Hi,
Hello.
Emily.
Jason. Nice to meet you, Emily.
Now, American or Canadian?
American, yeah. So where are you from?
I've lived in London for 6 years, and before that I lived in York.
You're from York, I'm from New York.
Oh my gosh, so like almost in the same place.
That's crazy.
We We might social mask by laughing at somebody's jokes when we don't actually understand what the joke is about. We might make eye contact with them, even if that doesn't come naturally for us.
What are you studying?
Politics.
Okay.
We might practice a pre-planned list of questions on the way to meet a new person to make sure we've always got something to ask.
When you've left uni, what are you hoping to do with your politics?
Yeah, don't say politician. No,
You don't want to be a politician? I'll look out for you in number 10.
We might make an extra effort with our body language. Now, obviously, everybody does that from time to time. But for autistic people, it's the extra effort that's required to make those decisions to try and fit in. And it doesn't come naturally in any way.
Time's up.
That went really quick.
Pleasure to meet you, Emily.
It's all nice girls. Yeah, quite bubbly, quite engaging.
There's a bit of laughter, a bit of banter going through, a bit of flirty banter as well. So, yeah, no, I think we went all right.
What would you say if I told you that one of the girls was autistic?
Really? Like, I got on with everyone, and I didn't think anyone was shy or awkward.
Well, I'd probably disagree with you.
The 4 women are autistic.
Oh, really? That's really? Is that true? Yeah, that's shocking.
Emily and the ladies have shown that social masking can be effective and could be one of the reasons why so many women go undiagnosed. But it comes with a heavy toll.
When we get home, it's pretty likely that all 4 of us will end up in a quiet, dark room. We won't speak or interact to anyone. There's a high chance one of us will have some kind of meltdown.
You've amazed me, the 4 of you.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
High five, ladies. Sorry, our whole life revolves around awareness. Everyone has the right to be their own version of normal and shouldn't have to pretend to be someone they're not. I think that if people can get recognised and diagnosed earlier, then they won't have to pretend and struggle so much. There is some progress being made in better recognising the signs, and in 2018, the criteria for diagnosing someone is being changed. The signs doctors look out for in patients are being updated, and the newest area they'll be examining is all about how our senses work. It's estimated that 90% of autistic people, like me, have what are called sensory differences, meaning how we see, hear, touch and feel the world can be different to the rest of you.
When I was a lot younger, it'd be something as simple as going over a speed bump, you know, in a car that was maybe doing like anything over 40 miles an hour, maybe feel sort of like my spine is sort of turned to lemonade and could fall apart at any minute.
I have touch problems, so buses are a nightmare because people don't understand. Like if I'm sat in the disabled seats on a bus, no one will believe me that I have an actual reason for not wanting somebody to sit next to me. And then, like, if I will freeze, I can't. If just touching my arm, I can't deal with it. But because there's nothing physically saying this person is different, no one believes you.
Heightened senses can be a real problem for us. The everyday world is filled with lots of sensory information, like bright lights, loud sirens, strong smells, even textures. It can soon become an overwhelming wave of sensory information, like being tuned into 40 different TV channels all at once, causing stress, anxiety, and even physical pain that can be unbearable, until finally, we have no option but to shut down. In autism circles, this is known as a sensory overload and can lead to a meltdown.
The first time I have a meltdown around someone, that clears up any issues. They might have been saying, you don't have autism, but then when I'm full on stimming, because I've had sensory overload, then they're like, maybe there's something up with that.
Yeah. If a person is having an anxiety attack or if they're having a bad day and they need some time to sort of recover from that, stimming would normally be the process as to calm them down. So, for example, if they're putting their hands over their ears like that and they're rocking back and forth, or if they're just putting their hands over their head like so and they're also going back and forth, then that is a sign of them saying, please help me, I'm freaking out.
Joe and JP suspect they also have sensory issues, but neither has yet received an autism diagnosis.
Do you have any issues in particular with your senses, JP?
I think I have hypersensitive hearing. I can hear electricity pumping around.
You can hear electricity?
Mm-hmm.
What about for you, Jo? What bothers you in terms of your senses?
Definitely bright lights. I wear sunglasses pretty much all year round.
Do you?
Yeah, even just the clouds can be too bright for me sometimes.
Testing Jo and JP's senses is Dr. Anna Remington of UCL. She thinks sensory differences could hold the key to some positive skills, not just problems.
It's really important when we're talking about autism to say that people might be different, but that doesn't mean they're worse. So actually there are a lot of strengths and abilities that are associated with autism as well. So situations where autistic people do better than non-autistic people.
Her research suggests that if autistic people focus on a single task, their heightened senses can offer an advantage. Anna's invented a test to measure how good Jo and JP are at taking in sounds, and they're told to listen out for particular noises. Through the headphones, they hear really short bursts of the 3 sounds: a dog, a lion, and a car. Every time they hear a sound, they tap a button that corresponds with that sound. Next, she bombards them with lots of other similar sounds to confuse them. And they must still pick out the dog, the lion, and the car. Dr. Anna's research suggests that just like computers, all our brains have a capacity for processing information. But autistic brains may have a bigger capacity. So when they're focused on just one type of sensory information, like the sounds in her test, they've got more brain capacity to separate the sounds as the task gets more difficult.
Anna, you're holding clipboards, you have a computer. This can only mean one thing. The moment of truth. OK.
Dr. Anna has already done this test on a group of nearly 40 people. The top black line shows the autistic group scored higher than the non-autistic group, whose results are displayed on the lower dotted line.
Jo, you can see your results here in pink. So, as you can see, your line is actually quite far above both of the other groups. And you can see that it's actually not dropping off that much as the task got more difficult. So on this particular test, it looks like you're performing similarly to the autism group that we had in our previous study, but actually even better than them. OK, so moving on to JP's results. Actually, you can see that you did very similarly to Jo. So again, your line of results is quite high up on the graph.
Right.
In this test, they are showing autistic traits. Yes, on this test, the way that you've done the task is very similar to the way that we've seen our other autistic participants do the task.
I'm not really sure what to make of that, actually, because, like Dr. Anna said, it's kind of like one step in a big process. So, yeah, I'd like to keep an open mind until I see the whole journey, really.
Well, today has let me know that there are things about my body that are hypersensitive. I still don't know if I'm on the spectrum or not, but it makes me feel a little bit more calm in my convictions that I was probably undiagnosed as a child.
Most people, when they think autism, think routine, strict timetables, maybe doing the same thing at the same time every day. And it's true that some autistic people do love routine.
But we're not the only ones. In fact, most people in Britain don't like change. A recent survey even found 90% of Brits often follow the same routine every single day, and the majority actively avoid a change to their routines.
Don't worry, it doesn't make you a little bit autistic. For us, it's not just that we don't like change, it's that our brains are wired differently, so sometimes change can be really difficult to process.
I hate change. Hate it. It's just too much for it to... you just can't have change. It throws you out completely, even if the light's changed, or if a person's changed, or if even someone's changed their hair. It's like, no, don't do this to me.
Things like planning, working memory, and flexibility to change are controlled mainly in the frontal lobe of the brain. It's not fully understood why, but it's thought different wiring in this part of the brain and how it connects to other parts means that some autistic people won't process change like the rest of you.
That's where our next scientific test comes in. Because JP and Jo have never had an official diagnosis of autism, our experts want to see how they cope with an unexpected change of plan.
Overseeing the testing is Professor Liz Pellicano of UCL Institute of Education and her colleague Lorcan Kenny.
So today we're going to test something called executive function, which is basically the way that the brain processes kind of complex tasks, breaks it down and makes it manageable, and so that you can get things done.
Professor Liz wants to see how that translates to the real world, so is keen to take her research out of the lab and into everyday settings, like a takeaway kitchen. First up is Joe.
You need to prepare takeaway lunches for 5 customers.
The test involves invented customers ringing in 5 different packed lunch orders, and then Joe has 10 minutes to make them all, but not before a surprise change is introduced.
OK, off you go.
Hello. So what exactly are you as a scientist looking out for, Liz?
We're looking to see how they prepare themselves, what kind of plan they work up and then put in place. We're looking to see how they can multitask, hold things in your mind and kind of work with them, and also kind of shift flexibly from one thing to the next.
Joe's been quick to formulate a plan and is already bagging up finished lunches. But how will she cope when 3 of the 5 orders are unexpectedly changed?
Hello.
Hi, I'm really sorry, but our customers have changed their order, please.
Right, OK.
OK, so the first customer had ordered a ham and cheese sandwich. But they need to change that to a toasted ham and cheese sandwich, please.
OK. OK. Bye.
She looks quite stressed.
No, she does look stressed. Jo is struggling with those changes, isn't she? So deviating from her plan.
And your time is up. Well done. How'd you find that?
Awful. That was really horrible. That was really horrible. I think if I was at home, I probably would have thrown something or screamed because I was so transfixed on what I'd already written down, and that's what I was expected to do. So when the change came, I couldn't really focus on the change because I already had it in my mind what I was doing before.
Hey. Hello.
Next up is JP.
Brilliant, no worries.
Musician JP has a 9-year-old autistic son, Richard. Planning is a crucial part of life for the family.
For a lot of people on the autistic spectrum, their day has to be mapped out and they have to understand what's happening in the day before it happens. Otherwise, it can lead to, you know, adverse meltdowns and stuff like that.
Like about 1/5 of autistic children, Richard is minimally verbal.
Sit down, please. This is how we would explain to Richard what's happening on any particular day.
The family communicates using the Picture Exchange Communication System, or PECS, a clever combination of picture cards that helps Richard connect with those around him.
Brush teeth, we already did.
It's integral to helping Richard plan out his day.
We got dressed, and now we're doing filming. So we've got the camera and the cameraman. So yeah, basically that's how we explain to Richard what's happening for the day.
JP thinks he might be autistic too. How will he cope with the unexpected change in orders?
Hello. No problem. Bye. It's grand.
There is no way he's going to be able to do this within 10 minutes.
No change on that one. Let's get the rest of this done.
And I'm afraid your time is up.
Ay, ay, ay.
How did you find that?
It was more difficult than I thought it was going to be fair. These type of things do give me anxiety, You might not see it on my face, but on the inside, I'm boxing, you know? It feels like a 12-round heavyweight fight, so yeah, I'm super happy it's over.
A recent study of 199 adults showed those with autism didn't perform as well in tasks that require mental flexibility like this one. But neither Joe nor JP have been diagnosed with autism, so how did they get on?
I think you were doing very well, and then you got this phone call halfway through, and it took you a while to stop processing that first round of instructions. And that's one of the things that we see quite a lot with our autistic participants, is that when they're kind of set in motion, it's hard for them to stop and then start again on something different.
Joe and JP's behaviour has now been analysed by some of Britain's leading experts, and the results do suggest they have autistic traits, but the only way to know for sure is to get a diagnosis. NICE guidelines recommend that the wait for diagnosis shouldn't take longer than 3 months, but a study from the National Autistic Society suggests the actual journey can take years. Tim Nichols is the man behind the report and says the situation in Britain is now at breaking point.
I absolutely believe that there is a diagnosis crisis in this country for autistic people. What we're seeing is adults are waiting around 2 years before first seeking professional help and getting their diagnosis, and for children that waits even longer.
And what are the consequences of this delay?
What we're seeing is that people living without the right support, that puts an enormous strain on families. You often see one parent giving up work to help care for the child. You might see other people within the family developing their own needs because things are so difficult without all the right support. But it's not just the impact on families. Some research suggested autism is the most costly condition in the UK at £32 billion. So that's more than heart disease and high blood pressure and cancer and those kinds of things. But we know that if we get it right, we can save money.
For Joe and JP, the wait won't be so long.
Both of you have been invited to see Professor Simon Baron-Cohen, who is a leading expert in autism, and he can perform the official diagnosis for you. How do you feel about doing that, Joe? Do you want to do it?
Absolutely. For me, I think it will be closure one way or another, and I'm aware that it might not be autism that is diagnosed. It might be something else. It might be like a social anxiety disorder. But whatever it is, I feel at this stage in my life I need to know what it is so I know how I can deal with it.
And JP, are you looking forward to doing that? Do you want to?
I'm absolutely looking forward to it. It would give closure to whether I'm just, you know, can't get over this weird behaviour, or do I actually have a condition that causes me to have behaviours that are different from neurotypical people.
You will get the results on the day.
Yeah.
Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
I am.
I am, because I think the wait afterwards would be quite traumatic, actually. And it'll be closure on the day, one way or the other, we'll know.
I've known I was autistic since I was 9, but for thousands of people without a diagnosis, like JP and Joe, they're left wondering whether they're autistic or just a bit weird. To get a proper answer, they have been invited for a diagnosis.
And it's not just with anybody, but Professor Simon Baron-Cohen, sometimes called a world-leading expert in autism.
Well, as much as a neurotypical can actually be an expert in autism.
So it's very nice to meet you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to Cambridge. We're meeting under sort of unusual circumstances because we're going to sort of explore whether you need a diagnosis. What would be the value of a diagnosis?
I think I need to know that I'm not just weird or rude.
Yeah. Which is what people have said?
Well, I know that's how I can appear.
Right. But actually you want to know, is there a reason why I behave differently?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I take on a role every day.
Really?
Depending on where I am. So if I'm doing the school run, I'm the mum with the school run that engages in a bit of hi, how are you type thing. Then when I go elsewhere, I'm a different person, and I feel like when I'm at home alone, that's nice because I don't have to put in any effort to be anyone. I'm just content.
Right.
I've had these strange feelings, or I've always felt, you know, different from my peers.
Yeah.
And, you know, if If there is a condition causing it,
yeah,
then
absolutely.
of course I'd love a diagnosis.
Yeah.
You're either born autistic or you're not. And when it comes to a diagnosis, there are often clues in your childhood.
I found the transition from primary school to secondary school too huge. I did go to a normal kind of high school and I couldn't cope with it. It was too big and didn't really get on with anyone in my class.
Yeah.
I remember being in the corridor when the bell went for another lesson and everyone just came out at once and went to go to their next room, and I just thought, God, this is absolutely horrific. It was just really, really overwhelming.
Right.
School was a place where I would always try and be by myself as much as possible.
Okay.
But I did want to mix. It was just painful. And the more effort I tried to put in, the more the kids kind of let me know that they could see I was different.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you take it as a sort of rejection?
Definitely.
Right.
So it would take another few months before I could pluck up enough courage to try again.
Oh my God.
And every time I was rejected, I just felt maybe being by myself is the best thing.
And I even noticed in one of the questionnaires you filled in that at times you felt life was so bad that you felt suicidal. You know, so that was clearly having an impact.
Yeah.
You cannot grow out of autism, and without a diagnosis or support, its challenges can follow you through life.
Unfortunately, I fell apart at college because it was too big, too unstructured, too much moving around.
Right. When you say fell apart...
I left after about 6 months, probably not even that.
Right.
I haven't tried it on for sizes yet, but I'm going to do it right now. I am autistic.
So, apparently I have Asperger's, which is a bit of a relief, actually. I feel like the weight has been lifted.
I must say it's a huge relief to have that diagnosis because after all of the years of being challenged and you know, struggling with things, now there is a name to the condition that I have.
I just feel like overwhelmed and happy. I just know who I am now.
Asperger's was my diagnosis too. All it means is that you're part of the autism gang. So I was first diagnosed at 9. I was really lucky to be diagnosed so young. And at the time, I have to say, I didn't particularly care. But when I started secondary school, and it became more and more apparent, at least to me, that I was different, I'm so glad that I already had that explanation so that I didn't completely turn that in on myself, you know?
Yeah, I had that as well. I mean, I was same age when I was diagnosed. And it was one of those experiences where I sort of thought, oh, this should be interesting, but different. And my dad, like, there wasn't a sit-down or family conference when I was told. It was just the most bluntest thing I think I've ever heard. It was very much as typical of my dad could do it. He just sort of walked in the doorway as I was brushing my teeth one morning and said, Sam, you've got autism. And I was like, okay, great. And then you could just sort of hear him walk down the corridor to my mum and say, she says it's okay. Professor Simon is also the neurotypical brain behind our online autism study.
In one of the largest ever of its kind, people were invited to complete 4 short questionnaires to capture how autistic traits are spread across the UK.
So, how many people took the test?
In the end, there were 750,000 people who took the test.
Wow. And is that big in terms of recent studies that have been shown?
Yeah, most of the studies in the scientific literature are much, much smaller. You know, maybe less than 100 or in the hundreds. So having 750,000 is huge.
So, Simon, we've been hearing about a lost generation. Is that reflected in the results?
Yeah, there might be lots of people in the population who just have gone undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. And the results do reflect that. So of everyone who took the test, there were actually 87,000 people who scored above the cut-off, pointing towards a diagnosis.
87,000, that's a huge number. Did that surprise you?
Yeah, it did. It's a very large number. It's telling us that there are a large number of people out there who might need a diagnosis.
We've heard a lot about undiagnosed women in particular through social masking and other factors. Was that reflected in the results?
Yes, 47,000 were women.
Wow.
So more than half. And that was a surprise, actually. And, you know, a lot of researchers and clinicians are now starting to think, have we been overlooking females in the population who might need a diagnosis? Have we been simply missing them?
If you are one of the 87,000 people, don't worry. Autistic people aren't broken or weird or anything to be scared of.
We're just ordinary people, but our brains are wired a bit differently. That's all.
Some of us, like me and Sam, use words to communicate.
Others are minimally verbal.
Autistic people can be any sex, any age, and any colour.
In fact, you could be one of us.
But if you think you might be autistic, it's not too late to ask for help.
Right, hold on then. And if you find out you are, it isn't the end of the world either. Join the club.
When developers threatened to demolish Sydney's public housing estate, residents fought back. Their battle cry, an ambitious and controversial work of art. The documentary premiere of There Goes Our Neighbourhood, next on ABC and iView.